just hang out with people that are doing what you want to do or going where you want to go, or even better, been where you want to go, because that's where you'll get mentorship, experience, motivation.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's show on Wealth Strategy Secrets. We've got another awesome show for you guys today. Today we are joined by Tom Burns. Tom is an entrepreneur, retired orthopedic surgeon, and a physician for the U.S. ski team. He has over 25 years of real estate experience and has acquired or developed over $700 million of real estate locally and internationally. He is the co-founder and principal of Presario Ventures, a private real estate company focused on apartment development and private equity in Texas and the Sunbelt. And Dr. Burns is the author of Why Doctors Don't Get Rich, a best-selling personal finance book for those who want to live life to the fullest. He's a sought-after speaker and mentor and has been financially independent for over a decade. He's the founder of the Rich Life Mastermind, created to help people create financial independence so they can control their future and travel to exotic places with him. Tom, my friend, welcome to the show.
Dave, great to be here, man. Appreciate the invitation.
You bet, Tom. This is long overdue to have you on the show and have a conversation. And I must share with the audience as well that we really go back pretty far. You and Darren. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have invested with you guys at such an early on time and really get into real estate and alternative investing. So it's been a great journey, but I'm grateful for that.
Hey, and likewise, it's nice to, as you know people for a long period of time, it's comfortable, it's nice to work together, and that makes life a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have such a diverse background, Tom. We do have a lot of docs and dentists and folks that are entrepreneurs as well. And I think, the common thread, right? I think we're all looking for that, financial independence or really freedom in our lives, right? Freedom of purpose, freedom of time, freedom of money, to be able to do the things that we want to do. And I find that that's so, unique about, how you got into this space as well. So can you share with the audience, more about your background? I mean, being the U.S. surgeon for the ski team, how you got into real estate investing and creating this journey for yourself.
Yeah, I think it ended up by default. When I was a kid, I was an athlete and had all those dreams, right? And, soon found out that nobody was going to pay me for it. So it's pretty good in school. So I thought I'll become an orthopedic surgeon and a sports guy so I can hang out with athletes. That was kind of the decision process. So I went through medicine is a prescribed process. You do your undergraduate work at college, you go to med school for 4 years, then you do a thing called a residency, is where you get all your training. So I'm flowing through all of that, and all I knew was sports and a little bit of medicine. And I got about halfway through my training as an orthopedic surgeon, and I tell you, I think it was just blind luck or touched by an angel, but I started watching the doctors that were teaching me. And we trained with the apprenticeship model, like blacksmiths and plumbers. You work with somebody that's done it for years and you learn the trade. So I'm looking at the folks that are supposed to be me 10, 20, and 30 years in the future. I didn't like what I saw. They had lots of money, but they were unhappy. They were on their second and third marriages. They were complaining about their situation. And, it finally, I saw that enough times. I thought, man, I don't want their money if I got to have their life. So I'd always intended on having a good run through life, meaning, my wife and I actually sat down and said, we're going to have fun no matter what we're doing, good times and bad. So I figured I needed something else. I was looking for some sort of income. I figured I need some sort of income that's not correlated with medicine. This was a long time ago. I've got a few birthday candles on my cake now, So I looked at a lot of things. I ended up settling on real estate because, I didn't have the money or time or smarts to trade stocks and start a business and all that. Real estate was nice and slow. low barrier to entry. I could do it part-time, full-time. I could use partners, things like that. So at the time, I didn't have two nickels to rub together, so I did what I could, which was I got as much education as I could. I read about it, learned about it, talked to people, started practice, got a little bit of an income, paid off the whatever debts I had. And then at the time, the only thing I knew how to learn how to do something was to do it. So I went and bought something. I just bought something, jumped in, and, small, unimpressive single property. And, things kind of grew since then. So it was really just an urge to control, kind of control my own life. And quite honestly, narcissistically, I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. So I figured if I had income coming in while I was sleeping, it would work out. So it grew after that. It grew from that one small property to, more than one small property.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I think before we, dive deep, there's just a couple of things that are really exciting about your background. I think we should unpack. Tell us what was it like to be the surgeon for the U.S. ski team?
Sure. So, and I'm not the surgeon. I'm just one of the doctors for
one
the
of the
ski
docs.
team.
Okay.
So, I'm not that cool. So I did my training. After you finish all your doctor training and your orthopedic training, you have a choice to go do what's called a fellowship, which is what I did, a sports medicine fellowship. And it was in Vail, Colorado, with a really famous famous couple of guys. And the one guy, the knee surgeon, was sort of the father of ski medicine. And so because of him, got to meet a lot of the skiers, got a lot of connections with the team, and so decided that, I really like taking care of the team. So actually, before I ever made a dime moving back to Austin, Texas, I went from Vail to Lake Placid, New York, and I was the doctor for the Olympic Training Center for a few weeks. And so took care of all the athletes, but one of the groups that was there was the freestyle team. Those are the guys that jump off of ramps and do flips and twists and things like that. They also do moguls. And so I was young and had been an athlete, so I trained with them. So I jumped with them, really liked the guys. Actually qualified to compete, but was never dumb enough to do that. So I stuck with them. So I have traveled with them for over 30 years. Just, went to Sweden with them this year, just in December. So it's just been a nice way to give back. It's a volunteer thing. But it's a nice way to see the world. So I've really been honored to do it. And even though I'm retired, I'm still taking care of the team, at least for a few more years.
Wow. That's really cool. And so that was my next question is, tell us a little bit about your love for traveling international, and you've done some international investments. You like to travel to exotic places. So tell us a little bit more about that passion.
Oh man, I'm gonna love this podcast. Yeah, that's my biggest hot button, Dave. I mean, it really is. So part of that fun thing for me is traveling because, I grew up pretty simple. We went to Disneyland once and went camping in Colorado another time. So that's the vacations I remember as a kid. My dad traveled internationally because he was a Secret Service agent. So once I got the means, we went to all the places we'd never been. And we intend to go back. So, if I had my way, I'd put a pin in every country in the world. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I like to travel. I think it opens you up. It gives you a lot of perspective. Lets you realize, when you're complaining about your cable bill or not being able to stream something, and you realize that, there's a lot of people that are trying to find their next meal, that sort of thing. So a lot of great perspective, a lot of, again, perspective on how other people live. We assume that our bubble is the way life is, and it is for us, but people live a lot differently around the world. And I'm just fascinated by how they do it, fascinated by history. This past weekend I was in Panama, but, a couple months before that went to India. So I would travel anywhere just to learn what the people are like. So I intend to keep doing that. I've been on top of mountains that nobody will be on top of for any sane reason, but I don't know why you'd be on top of a mountain in Tajikistan if you didn't have a specific reason to be there, but it was pretty cool. So
wow, that's awesome. And do you have do you have a certain list of experiences or destinations that you're going after right now?
It's kind of like my financial world. I kind of have this vague thing where I kind of want to do it all, but, I haven't, so next is either Middle East or Southeast Asia. I haven't done Cambodia, Vietnam, Cairo, that sort of stuff. So that part of the world I haven't been to. I've been to Japan and missed my trips to China. I was supposed to go with the ski team during COVID, but they kept canceling it. So think we're going to head that way next time, see what that part of the world lives like, see how they live.
Yeah. Well, I definitely share your passion with travel, Tom. I've been to 6 continents, over 40 countries, and it's just been such a phenomenal way to learn the world. And like you say, like it gives you a different lens on things. When you view everything from the economy, the culture, the way people are living. And so it really has made an indelible mark on me. I love to travel as well. And, I know a lot of the listeners know kind of my story and how we were able to actually incorporate that into our wealth plan, which is, we bought 10 years ago, we bought real estate in Italy. And so we've had the wonderful opportunity to bring our kids for the past 10 years, to Italy, to our rental property, right? Where we've got income, we've got depreciation, and then get to go, a place that we really love. And then every time we go there, we go visit somewhere else. We can go to France, we can go to Switzerland, we can travel all over. We have some amazing friendships there. We've been learning the language, but I think that's also really helped our kids, learn these same, valuable lessons, and really not enough people in the US, I think, really travel abroad.
Well, and we're blessed to have the means to do that. Not everybody has that, but I tell you, you mentioned the kids. It really, for my kids, it really opened things up for them. When you do a report on London or the Eiffel Tower or whatever, when they've actually been there, it just makes a difference and helps them a bit in school, and but also broadens their horizons. When they see how people are living in I spent a lot of time in Africa and had the kids with me, and that was very helpful for my kids to maybe complain a little less about certain things.
Yeah, for sure. So what type of international investing have you done?
So I've got, the biggest one was I own a ranch in Africa. I was in South Africa. So we had a lot of acreage, and we bought it kind of raw, and some of it was very wild, and some had been inhabited. And so we removed all the internal fencing, any buildings that were falling down, and fenced the whole thing and stocked it with animals, because in South Africa, if it's not behind a fence, it's going to get poached and eaten, because people are having some food insecurity there, a lot of food insecurity. So we were able to bring back a lot of species. So we fenced off 6,000 acres. We had a river that went out to the ocean. We had beautiful cliffs, and so we stocked rhinos and giraffe and zebra and waterbuck and bushbuck and kudu, and it was just beautiful. Wow. So I'd run around there on a motorcycle and eat meat pies and drink South African beer. It was a great trip. We had that for probably 10 or 12 years.
Wow.
A little bit of stuff in Panama, and that's really it internationally. Most of it's been domestic.
Domestic, okay. Yeah, that's amazing. So do you have a particular wealth strategy or a framework that you've been following to build your wealth?
Yeah, it's never been really complicated. Again, going back to the sort of initial touch by the angel, I just wanted some income coming in that I didn't necessarily have to provide my time for. I was a doctor, so I either had to do surgery or see a patient or do something. So I wanted something coming in extra, and eventually what I wanted was that to cover certain expenses, then I wanted it to cover all expenses, and then I wanted it to cover my lifestyle, which is actually a different number than expenses. So that's been pretty much the philosophy, was to always make sure that the passive cash flow eclipses the expenses and costs of having a life traveling around the world. I continue to do that. There have been some gaps where I've had several years where I didn't add to that passive income, but I keep trying to do that. Never looked at net worth. Granted, I had to all the time because we get underwritten a billion times a year for projects, and so I'd see the number, but that was not important to me. It was more the cash flow. How can I pay my bills? So that's still the primary focus. There's a little bit of securing. So I secured most of my stuff with real estate. I'm securing it with a few other things, a little bit of precious metals, things like that. It took me a long time to decide to buy precious metals because it didn't produce cash flow. So you can see where my primary focus was. Always more cash flow.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that, that thought process, right, that you had as a doctor and moving into passive income and really understanding that. Because I think a lot of folks in the audience, whether you're actually practicing medicine today or you're in some type of, career that it's highly specialized skills. So essentially getting paid, for your time, right, in the time and effort economy. So what was it really like to kind of, go through that thought process to think about, what could it be like on the other side and how do you really frame that up? Because I think a lot of people probably struggle with that.
Sure. And sometimes it's because people think, oh, if you're doctor, lawyer, engineer, ditch digger, whatever, it's like, wow, I don't know what it'd be like not to do this. You don't have to not do your job. There's a lot of people that like their jobs. So the way I framed it was that I wanted control, right? And, money's not the most important thing in the world, but like Zig Ziglar says, it's right up there with oxygen. Money buys a lot of stuff. It's a lot more fun to have it than to not have it. So I knew that if I could get to a point where something else was paying for my bills, I could decide what I wanted to do. And quite honestly, Dave, I practiced medicine for 12 and a half years after my income eclipsed my expenses because it was fun. I eliminated the annoying stuff. So that's the one thing people think, I've got to make this huge amount of cash flow. How am I going to get out? I framed it in that, as every little bit of cash flow came, I took it small chunks at a time. I always use the example that I had everything on Quicken and I knew what my utility bill was for the year. Pushing a button, I could tell what it was. Well, I one time looked at that number and realized how much passive income I was making. I thought, hey, I've covered my utilities. And so, the next one might be, hey, I've covered my grocery bill for the year. Small bits like that. Then all of a sudden, one day you realize I've covered everything that I need to survive. And I can do what I want now. I can grow that, side hustle or that real estate business or whatever it is. I can grow that larger if I want to, or I can enjoy my job or my profession or my, passion more, or you sit on the couch and, binge Game of Thrones if you want to. It's just, you have the choice. So, I just felt that there was more to life than being tied down to having to produce effort for every bit of money. And, no matter how much you get paid, and the title of my book is Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. It's basically a metaphor for the fact that no matter how much you get paid per hour or per service, if you get sick or get hit by a bus, the music stops. And so you want to have security for your family. You want to have fun in life. You might want to have fun in life. And so that's how I looked at, that's how I thought about it. Now, I wasn't in any pain. And a lot of people in my previous profession are in quite a bit of pain now. They're a lot more amenable to thinking outside the box because, back then you got paid a lot of money. And a thought process from, I was told once by somebody that's like, well, I can just do another surgery or I can just take call and get paid for it, which is true. And it's more immediate and it's a lot more fun. Investing takes a little deferred gratification. But the question is, what do you do next month? You still got to do that surgery again. You got to take that call and the next month and the next, and so I think the freedom that the passive income gives you choice. We all want choice in life. We're humans. We want to have indoor plumbing and have a roof over our heads. We like to control our environment. So why not control our financial environment and really get everything we can out of life?
It's such an important distinction, Tom. And I know I've had so many conversations with docs as well that, talk about, they say, they love, 80% of what they do, but sometimes it's the 20% that's just really frustrating. And I know a lot of us can, really relate to that. So even achieving that passive income threshold that covers your expenses, I think a lot of it is around the psychology. Like you say, you framed it as choice. Right. But yeah, having freedom of choice. Right. And many have said that it's like, I still want to practice, but I want to practice on my own terms. Right. And there's such a difference between doing that and not having a control working for somebody else. And like you said, being kind of stuck with, that next surgery or whatever it is that you kind of get in this rat race that you can't get out of.
Yeah, people, the word some use is trapped. They got to keep working. because the income's got to come in. And, of course, our expenses rise to reach our income. But it is really nice to have some control. And medicine can be a lot of fun when you practice it the way you want to, as you just said. That's all I did. I just eliminated the stuff that was annoying. You're able to tell hospitals or insurance companies, I don't need you, and spend more time with your patients. Actually makes you a better physician if that's your profession, because you can spend more time. You're there for them. You're not there for the fee or the paycheck. And it changes your mindset, and your patients see it. And it's a really noble way to give back, is to be able to, heal suffering and not need to be paid for it.
Yeah, for sure. So has any of your passive income, taken a hit recently with, some of the stress in the real estate market? And, what are you thinking about the market and your strategy these days?
Yeah, we're, certainly at our firm, we actually about 15 months ago backed off the pipeline because we didn't like what the horizon looked like. And so that was a good call for us. Not that we've always made great calls, but we really backed off the pipeline. We're trying to look at as many stable projects as we can, typically strong partners, great locations, things like that. So you always want to say you're conservative. We've even really kind of dialed up the conservatism meter, so to speak. Passively, none of my stuff has, because of market forces, none of my stuff has taken a hit because I favor fixed debt, so I haven't been hit too hard by the change in rates. Some of the projects that we do development, so some of those projects were in process, so it didn't affect my passive income, but it will, because a project that takes 14 months to build is now taking 30 months to build because of this COVID and supply chain issues. So as you stretch out timelines, you increase expenses, you start amortizing loans occasionally, and prices go up. So that's where our focus has been, is to keep those things going. They're all doing fine, but those timelines are longer. So I guess by extension, the payback is going to be later. So that was an effect. And then there's the human element. So there's been some. Occasionally there's been some bad actors out there. They're there. As Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked.
Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot going on for sure. Just one question on are you guys still pursuing HUD type financing? Because I know that was quite a niche for you at some point.
Yeah, we did a lot of HUD early, a long time ago. In fact, that's where we cut our teeth. And then in the run up to 2021, speed was much more valuable than HUD. So we ended up, our process that maybe have half of our portfolio is merchant builds where we sell it, 3 to 5 years, and the others are designed for long-term holds. And so we actually sold 3 HUD projects in the last 2 years that were on 40-year debt just because the numbers were so crazy from buyers. So with that, we are re-engaging with HUD for certain projects because that's still some of the best debt out there. We haven't done one yet recently. Still able to use the life cos and some of the banks for our debt. So we actually have one HUD project running right now. So, and it's stabilizing at the present time. But haven't initiated a new one since COVID.
Yeah, no, that's a nice niche. I don't think many operators have have gone through the undertaking, to get into that. So there's a nice barrier to entry there.
Yeah, and that's why we went with debt that was easier to get. I mean, HUD is wonderful once you have it. It's a lot of brain damage to get, and it used to be 6 to 9 months, and we're looking at 9 to 12 months now to get HUD projects approved, but they still have money. So if your planning is good, you go through the process. It costs a fair amount. It costs you upwards of $1 million to get to, final approval. But you pretty much know after about 100,000 that you're probably going to get approved. And so we will go through that process if it makes sense. But none of the current projects are looking at HUD debt. It's, once it's there, it's fixed for 40 years, and it's wonderful. Yeah. And in fact, the construction debt is fixed for 20 months. So it's a great product.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely provides some certainty in this
Yeah,
uncertain market on
right.
the debt side for sure. And are you focused primarily in Texas right now, or are you looking at other markets?
We pretty much stay home. We used to have some properties in the surrounding states, Oklahoma, New Mexico. We divested of those a while back. Realized that for our firm, we had plenty of business in Texas. The whole world's moving to Texas, right? And so bringing jobs, bringing people, and jobs and people equal, the need for housing. We're pretty selective, though. We tend not to work. We don't work at all in the urban cores. We work in the secondary markets and on the fringes of those urban cores. And we watch the deliveries and the absorption. So in particular around Austin right now, it's a bit of overbuilding, surprise. But we think that's going to get absorbed over the next 18 to 24 months. So we stay in Texas. We do have one portfolio that has properties in Alabama, and that's an Alabama-Texas portfolio. It's a portfolio of 5 properties. And so that was our most recent foray outside of Texas. We've looked at Florida, where you reside. Great state to build things. We almost did something a few years ago. Almost doesn't count, but we like that state. We just need somebody good on the ground there, and we did have somebody. We just didn't pull the trigger on that one.
Yeah, yeah, it is fascinating. You hear certain things in the news and what the narrative is, but just driving around here in the market, it's amazing. Multifamily, assisted living, build to rent, you name it. There's so many people coming in. I think Florida is now the 4th largest in terms of GDP, in the country. So. I really think, Tom, from, the macroeconomic standpoint, I mean, I still think there's a very strong case for multifamily, despite, the headwinds we're seeing in the debt markets. But when you look at the, shortfall around housing, and especially when you multiply that by some of these strong markets, it still seems quite compelling.
Yeah, as you know, we're still close to 4 million multifamily units underbuilt between now and 2030. And you see numbers anywhere from 6 million to 1 million housing units short. It just depends on who you listen to, but there's not enough housing. The young folks coming out that would maybe would have liked to have bought a house are having great difficulties now, so they're renters. So the high interest rates are certainly working for apartment developers and acquirers. So it's in the long term for multifamily still is good. It makes you sound like a homer, but you just look at all the data out there, all the articles. People that have nothing to do with multifamily say, hey, this is probably the asset class to be in. I even saw somebody said it ought to be its own asset class. So in the short term, as I mentioned, we're a little overbuilt in Austin, but Austin's the darling of the country, the darling of the world for some people as far as where people want to live. Not that we haven't had lots of layoffs and people not using their office space. We had a lot of shadow inventory in Austin, but people are moving and there's still a large net migration, and there's been a slowdown in development, rightfully so. I mean, even our firm, right? So we pulled back on our portfolio, but we're still looking to develop. And, there's going to be a gap. There's a 74% decrease in apartment starts in the area in Central Texas. So give it time, and there's going to be a gap at some point because not enough product was produced. So those that can weather the storm now and get their projects going, by the time that gap is there, they're going to have a lot less trouble stabilizing their properties. So yeah, I think multifamily has a great future. Ours is, as we talk about development, but the acquisitions, workforce housing, you can't make more of it, and it's always going to be needed. And so I think it's going to be a good, stable asset class. And you see a lot of big money going into multifamily, waiting for some opportunities. And there are some out there. Just had one the other day that's, seller in trouble, but I don't think it's going to be as many as there were in 2009 and 10.
So tell us a little bit more about new development, right? I think most of the audience is very familiar with, value add Class B, right, type model, which is typically what's talked about most on the multifamily side. But can you tell us about, some of the differences in doing, new projects? And sometimes people, see it as a more speculative type option. So, how do you really manage the risk on a new development?
Yeah, and I think in everything in life, I think you hedge your risk with your education and experience, right? So yeah, it's certainly kind of fits the brain better to see something and realize, hey, I can put countertops, cabinet fronts, and new flooring in. This thing's going to run for more, and that's a fabulous business plan. And that's we've done that a time or two, but I think by default we ended up in the development world. It wasn't planned; it just sort of happened, and so. And neither one's better or worse than the other. They're just different. So, in a development, there's a gap. There's a good 2-year gap before everything's stabilized and, the rents are covering debt service and there's some cash flow. On a value add in a good market, that can come in a quarter or 2, 3 quarters. Right now, I've seen a lot of people waiting at least 4 quarters before they end up putting out any cash flow because they're holding it back, rightfully so. So, cash flows maybe a little later in development, but on the good side, we know what's behind every wall. You try to do as much inspection as you can on a property that you acquire, but you can always run into surprises. There's still, no matter what you find, there will still be deferred maintenance on a development property. Pretty good for about 10 years with minimal deferred maintenance. But on the risk side, it's just how it depends on how many of these things you do. Somebody that's doing value adds, they know, particularly now, we're going to go in at lower leverage. We're going to overraise a little bit, make sure we have a little more contingency. We're going to plan on higher interest rates, or we're going to buy a rate cap. The things that you would do to hedge your risk in a value add. We do the similar thing in development. We exercise GMAX contracts, which means our contractor will eventually give us a bonded contractor that says, here's the price, with the exception of a few small things. If we go over budget, it's on us. So the cost is run through the contractor. You do the same thing with your assumptions. We try not to assume, rapidly rising rents and all that's the same value add and for multifamily and for development. So it's more in the experience where you found out where you've run into trouble in the past and what you maybe should have looked at on that project, so you incorporate it into the next one. And so I think it's not really so speculative because lumber's lumber. It's going to have its cost. You'll know what it is before you pull the trigger, and you buy it and you know what your number is. It may be high or low, but you know what it is. Same thing when you're doing a value add. It may cost you more to rehab a unit than you thought. So once you do the numbers, they're still pretty much the same. And so the numbers kind of tell you what to do. If they're thin, you often don't do the project, or you bring in more contingency. And if they're nice and robust, then off you go.
How are you able to actually project then, let's say you pick one of those submarkets that you were talking about, right? I'm sure you're doing a lot of data analysis in terms of, the population growth and what's to expect. But do you have a formula or something that you go through to look at that?
Yeah, we have a process. We've got a pretty robust subscription to CoStar. So we look at CoStar's numbers and deliveries and absorption. And, we're still always aware that CoStar's still got a lag. It gets its information from the management companies, but we're still aware there's a lag, but that gives us a good broad picture. We do the same thing that you do if you're buying a value add. We still do the boots on the ground and see what people are getting for their properties. We see how leased up they are. But then we'll do a feasibility study. And that's basically a third party that uses growth projections, numbers of units in the pipeline, that sort of thing, to see how many are in the pipeline and how many are needed. And, if it says, hey, we need 2,000 units and there's 1,900 in the pipeline, they back off for a while. If it says there's 2,000 needed and there's, 500 being built that we know about, so that means that we're part of that need that's coming up. So it's data. And then we look at population in migration. We look at the job growth, the population growth. We'll talk to this Chamber of Commerce if it's a small municipality, what's going on, what kind of projects do you have going on. we try to go outside and see who's maybe looking to move there. And, when you're in Texas, it's pretty exciting because some of these small towns are, they're getting large manufacturing plants or large warehouses. We've got Tesla just right next to the airport here, right? It's got something like 5,000 employees in this mile-long building. Well, that's awesome. That's a lot of employees, but something like that requires a lot of support. Somebody's got to do battery support, and somebody's got to help with the bumpers. I'm making this stuff up, but something like that brings in a lot of people. So companies are relocating. They're bringing their people. They're bringing families, and so it's the job growth and the in-migration of people and jobs.
Yeah. And any particular areas that you're focused on right in this market where you're seeing opportunities that you're paying very close attention to right now?
Yeah, they're all expensive, right? They just are. It's Texas, and everybody knows it. So there's a highway that runs through Texas called Interstate 35. Goes right through the middle of the state, comes from Mexico, goes through the middle of the state, and that encompasses Dallas, Fort Worth, Waco, which is a small place, Austin, and San Antonio. So most of our focus right now, we have stuff up as far as Denton, which is in North Texas on I-35. Most of our stuff, believe it or not, is between Austin and San Antonio, sort of a golden strip. My joke is that someday from a satellite, you're going to look down and see nothing but a strip of light from Austin to San Antonio. So anything in that area is pretty hot. Lots of people moving there because they can live there and work in San Antonio, or they can work in Austin or work in a small town. So that's one thing. And there's, the Texas Triangle, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston to the east, Austin, San Antonio in the center. That's something like 70 or, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but roughly 70% of the Texas population. So that's a big, busy, popular area for companies to relocate, for people to move their families. And so we stay in that area. Kind of, Houston's a bit of a kind of occasional stepchild for us, so we know the market well, but most of our stuff's up and down Interstate 35. That's given us enough business. We're sitting on a nice 12-acre piece of land. We're going to put up a bunch of apartments right in a place where the population growth is like 6.9%. So we like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Really great insights, Tom. Appreciate that. Just shifting back into, your financial independence credo and everything. If you could give the listeners just one piece of advice about how they could really accelerate their wealth journeys, what would it be?
Oh, you bet. It's always more than one. I have to do more. But, figure out why you want to do it. I know it sounds goofy. You want more money. But money's just the tool that's going to get you what you really want. And that's either time with your kids, away from your job, traveling the world like Dave, something like that. That's what's going to pull you through the up and down times. We're not in great times right now, but that's what's going to pull you through. And, he who stays in the game long enough wins, right? So once you know why you're doing it, get some sort of education, listen to podcasts like this, read some books, listen to other podcasts, get a feel for what you like or what you understand. And then the last one is just hang out with people that are doing what you want to do or going where you want to go, or even better, been where you want to go, because that's where you'll get mentorship, experience, motivation, partners, people to invest with, investors. It's just something to hang around a group of people that kind of has the same thought process as you, because you'll find out in the world that not everybody has the same thought process. So right or wrong, it's nice to have a team to help cheerlead along the way. And that's what'll keep you going. And you can do it. Anybody can do this thing. I mean, I bumped into so many, blind hallways and dead ends, and somehow blindly stumbled my way into where, the world was nice enough to give me some passive income and some choice. So if I can do it, I think everybody on this call can do it. Bigger, better, and faster.
Great insights, Tom. Can't thank you enough for spending your time with us today and sharing your wisdom. So many real, eclectic thoughts there, full 360 degrees. So I look forward to listening to this episode again myself. And again, thanks for your time. If anyone would like to, connect with you, learn more about you, what's the best place?
Yeah, you bet. I'm excited. I was eclectic. That's code for strange. No, I'm just kidding. They can. Website is richdoctor.com. And, if you want to get in touch with me, I do see all the emails. You can send an email to hello@richdoctor.com. And so the website's got some free resources if people want to use them. It's kind of the stuff that's helped me do things over the last 30 years. But always like to talk to new people.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks, Dave.